Now, coming back to our second speaker for today, you can't be lonely if you like the person you are alone with. One of my all-time favorite quote from Wayne Dyer: "Judgment prevents us from seeing the good that lies beyond appearances." Arjun Iyer is going to unfold the book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, book written by Wayne Dyer. Coming to Arjun Iyer is entrepreneur, life coach, trainer, motivational speaker, director, step management solutions. He has completed his master's from Bond University in Australia, distinction computer programming qualification from the United Kingdom, and bachelor's from famous Satnam College, Bombay. Arjun conducts special sessions in many universities in and around UAE. He's a passionate speaker, life and professional coach. He's also an NLP practitioner. I got more things to say due to time constraint. Let me invite the energy alchemist, Arjun Iyer. Arjun, please.
Thank you very kindly. Thank you very kindly. That's amazing. That's amazing. Verse, verse 49, verse 49 of the Tao Te Ching, Tao Te Ching, verse 49 of the Tao Te Ching. The sage has no fixed mind. The sage has no fixed mind. He is aware of the needs of others. He is aware of the needs of others. Those who are good, he treats with goodness. Those who are bad, he also treats with goodness, because the nature of his being is good. He is kind to the kind, and he is also kind to the unkind, because the nature of his being is kindness. Great day to all of you here today. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I am going to take just a little bit of time today to share with you my personal philosophy. My personal philosophy. And my is me. This is who I am. I discovered this philosophy when I was 13 years old. I discovered the title of this philosophy in 2012, and I was about 40 years old. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a book called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. I was introduced to the science of martial arts when I was 13 years old, and the symbol of yin and yang. The yin-yang symbol is known to people around the world. You probably could see the symbol in your mind. And if you can see the yin-yang symbol in your mind right now, just give me a thumbs up or a wave and do something with your hands right now to acknowledge to me that you know what the yin-yang symbol is. Yeah, most of you would. Yeah, it's very commonly available, and it's representative of Eastern philosophy. And the yin-yang symbol symbolizes the male and the female, the light and the dark, good and evil, the profound and the profane, the sinner and the saint. And it symbolizes together balance. It symbolizes unity and diversity. It symbolizes the coexistence of opposites. It symbolizes paradox. And the word paradox is prevalent, ubiquitous, all through the philosophy of Taoism or the Tao Te Ching. And this philosophy is a philosophy that resonated hugely with me when I was young. And then I was beaten down by the logical world, by education, by society, and I kind of put that aside. And later on in life, when I discovered spirituality and just came into my own power, I allowed the expression of this philosophy. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about this book before we get going. And before that, I'd like to describe this book to you in one word. And the description of this book in one word, that one word is the word harmony. harmony, Harmony. That's the one word that describes this whole book. And it was fascinating for me today to wake up and look at my phone and to see the headlines as a peace treaty between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. Can you raise your hand if you guys read that or saw that? Did you guys see that? Okay, good. Now, when I saw that for the first time, my eyes went about this wide, primarily because it was almost unbelievable. This was something which, if someone had told you would happen even a year ago, or 2 or 3 or 5 years ago, you and I would have said, no way, Jose, impossible, cannot happen, will not happen in this lifetime. Now, perhaps there will be those who are still pessimistic about this whole process, or might think that it may or may not work out. Me personally, I'm just an eternal optimist. Heck, I'm a utopian kind of guy. And I believe that every book starts with the first chapter. And this could be, in my humble opinion, perhaps the first chapter of a harmonious relationship in the Middle East, starting with a peace treaty between the UAE and Israel, which is really, really fantastic. And I think how fascinating, how synchronistic, how serendipitous that it happens on a day where I am speaking about a book that has impacted me tremendously. Now, this is a book which I have read probably, there are some chapters in this book that I've read over 10 times. There are some chapters in this book that I've read 3 or more times. But at the very least, I would have read this book 3 times. And I go back to the chapters over and over again. This book was written throughout the year of 2006. All throughout the year of 2006, this book was being written. The author spent 4 days on each chapter. And the book was published in the year 2007. Okay. Now, the book is an interpretation. It is a translation. This book is actually a book about a book. That's what it is. It's a book about a book. It is an interpretation and it is a translation of an ancient Chinese scripture called the Tao Te Ching. And now Western pronunciation pronounces it as Tao, T-A-O. Eastern pronunciation pronounces it as Tao, T-A-O. And it doesn't matter what you call it. Call it the Tao, call it the Tao. I think Tao just rolls off my tongue, and therefore I call it the Tao Te Ching. It's available in most bookshops around the world and online on most forums as well. The genre of the book is philosophy, morality, theology, spirituality, esoteric, and inspiration. That's the genre of the book. Now, whenever I have spoken about this book, I have been a little conscious and conscientious because not everybody is in a state of readiness, perhaps, to receive the information that this book shares. In fact, the greatest enemy of this book has been pragmatism. And when human beings come forth with a left brain and say, hey, this won't work because that is the opponent of this book. And the beauty of this philosophy is this philosophy does not consider anything to be an opponent. And therefore, when I have received opposition to the views in this book, I merely humbly bow down and give respect and reverence to that opposition. And I permit the existence of that opposing point of view. Now, let me use the Tao philosophy and share something from the Tao philosophy itself, and this is paraphrased. Okay, here's what it says. So this is about in the presence of opposition, in the presence of conflict, in the presence of offense, in the presence of attack. Here's what it says, and this is paraphrased. Okay, so there are 14,000 translations of the Tao Te Ching. 14,000. This is the most translated book on the planet after the Bible. So the Tao Te Ching is an ancient Chinese scripture. Now, the Tao Te Ching has been written in ancient Chinese characters. It has 5,000 Chinese characters in it. Now, 14,000 different people have interpreted it in 14,000 different ways. Because ancient Chinese language and ancient Chinese symbolism itself has multiple meanings. The Chinese language, just like Japanese, is a pictographic script. The script is called pictographic. I say this because I studied Japanese. I can speak fundamental basic Japanese. And I'm proud to say that in my class, I even topped the class in conversational Japanese. So I learned to write Japanese. So in English, you write A to Z, 26 characters. In Japanese, there are 3 different scripts. In English, there's just one script of 26 characters. There's a script called hiragana, which is the Japanese words, katakana, where they use Western words. When they're writing Western words, they use katakana. So in Japanese, for example, the word toilet is pronounced as toire. Toire, T-O-I-R-E, is the Japanese word for toilet. When you write the word toire, you use script number 2, katakana. But you also have a Japanese word called benjio. When you write benjio, you use hiragana, a different script. Now there's a third script called kanji. And kanji is originally from Chinese scripture. And kanji has over 10,000 characters in it. Just imagine, you and me have to study 26 characters. In Japan and in China, by the time a child is in the 5th or the 6th grade, they have already studied approximately 2,000 of those pictographic scripts. So the word tree, for example, is like the drawing of a tree. Right? That's how it is. So when you actually learn a little bit about the language, you start figuring out how they think. The Chinese philosophy, Eastern philosophy has a lot to do with flow. That's where Taoism comes from. So I was talking about response to offense. This is how the Tao Te Ching responds to opposition and offense. It says there is great peace. There is great peace in non-response. Let me say that again. There is great peace in non-response. So when someone offends you and that ego need you feel to offend back, that is unpeaceful. But there is great peace in non-response. And then it says, furthermore, in not needing to respond, there is great joy. That's Tao philosophy at its best. There is great peace in non-response. Furthermore, in not needing to respond, there is great joy. When I studied the martial arts, my teacher taught me it's a lot about flow. You may have seen the movie Karate Kid. And it had part 1, part 2, part 3. The Japanese master there was called Master Miyagi, right? And Master Miyagi told his protege, his student, Daniel-san, he said, when punch come, you know be there. You know be there, which means when the punch comes, all you do is step aside, and the guy, there was a scene in the movie where this guy tries to punch Master Miyagi. Master Miyagi moves aside. The guy breaks the window of a car, and the guy's hand starts bleeding. There is great peace in non-response. Furthermore, in not needing to respond, there is great joy. That's the philosophy of the Tao. So that's the genre, okay? Now, the author of the Tao Te Ching, the original scripture, was this guy, okay? And his name is Lao, L-A-O, Lao Tzu, T-S-U. And when you translate the words Lao Tzu, the words Lao Tzu literally from Mandarin to English translates into old man or old master. So they figured out that this cannot be his name. It was an honorific. For example, doctor, Mr., those are honorifics, right? Prefixes given to the name. Our conjecture has it that his name was Er Li, but they're not too sure because this is all history and some of these records have been lost. Now, Lao Tzu was a scholar, a savant, a prophet, a curator of ancient texts and scriptures. He was the keeper of the imperial archives in the ancient Chinese capital of Luoyang. And in a word, his philosophy was harmony. Now, what he did was he was very frustrated at that time. This guy, let's just call him Lao Tzu, even though that was not technically his name. He was upset at the disharmony with the conflict, with duality, with division, with the whole thought process of you are that person and I am this person. And today we see a lot of dualism being played out, polarity. For example, I am tall, you are short, I am Hindu, you are Muslim, you are Christian, you are Indian, you are Arab, you are white, you are brown, you are Jew, religious dualism, racial dualism, educational dualism, economic dualism. This created a lot of turmoil within Lao Tzu. So he got onto his donkey and he started driving away. And then he came to this place which was like a passage. And at that passage, there was a watchman. And the watchman recognized Lao Tzu. And this guy who was the guard, he said, Lao Tzu, I cannot let you go. I need you to, I just cannot leave you because you're a wise man. Now, according to story, and nobody knows if this is true or not, this is still conjecture, this is still assumption. The Lao Tzu dictated the Tao Te Ching to the guard, to the watchman. And the Tao Te Ching was 5,000 Chinese characters in 81 different verses. 81 different verses. And the verse that I read to you at the beginning was verse number 49. That was verse number 49. Okay, and just like that, there are 80 more, so a total of 81 verses of the Tao Te Ching. The number 8, if you take the number 8 and you put the number 8 on its side, take the number 8 and put the number 8 on its side, that's the symbol for infinity. And infinity is a representation of consciousness. Infinity is a representation for energy, for God, for the universe, for divine. You look at any scripture, any religion, and you read between the lines and sometimes even very directly about what that divinity is. The prophet who actually talks about divinity in any form, regardless of where you come from, what kind of a thought process you come from, speaks about divinity and universe from the perspective of infinity. That's the number 8. 81. And then you have the number 1. And the number 1 is the number for unity, oneness, all together. The one expressing itself as the many. The many has its origin in the one. And that's an infinite number of forms. 81 verses, Tao Te Ching. And then there was this guy. So, I mean, there's the meaning. I know I'm looking at the time. I'm conscious. I'm going to talk a little bit about the author, and then I'm going to start wrapping up and just leave it with you to discover this book. Once again, I will say that I share the ideas of this book with no insistence that you should read it, because that is the philosophy of the Tao. I share the concept of this book with no insistence that you should take any interest or follow any of these principles, because the Tao is all about flow. It's about allowing rather than insisting. Wayne Dyer spent a whole year studying the Tao Te Ching. He got hold of 10 different translations, 14,000 translations. He picked up 10. One of those translations, I believe, was the translation by Stephen Mitchell. I think there was one by Alan Watts, but I'm not too sure about the Alan Watts one, but I know he studied Stephen Mitchell's translation of the Tao Te Ching. Wayne Dyer has passed away in 2015, lived from the year 1940 to 2015. Wayne Dyer has written over 40 books. So like I said, this is a book about a book. The original book is the Tao Te Ching. What I'm talking to you about is the translation of the Tao Te Ching, because if you read the Tao Te Ching, either it's in Chinese or if you read the English translation, it's so cryptic that when you read the sentences, sometimes it makes no sense, because it's philosophy, the Chinese language being translated into English, and the author's best interpretation. That's what it is. Wayne has done the hard work for us by making it easy. Wayne Dyer wrote 40 books. 21 of those 40 books were New York Times bestsellers. He's been on radio shows, televisions. He's been interviewed by Oprah, Deepak Chopra, Tony Robbins, yada, yada, yada. Huge repertoire. And Wayne Dyer dedicated 4 days to each verse. He would read the verse, study the verse, verse, meditate on it, read the verse in different translations, go for a swim in the ocean. He was in Maui in Hawaii. Is a very spiritually evolved soul. And then towards the end of day number 4, just in about half a day, he wrote the chapter about the book. Every chapter, at the end of the chapter, has a section called Do the Tao Now, where this is Wayne Dyer's recommendation for application of that particular chapter. So it's a fascinating read. I'd like to close with verse 16 and verse 29 of the Tao Te Ching, because it's very relevant for the scenario that we are in today. Verse 16. And again, this is a paraphrased version. Remember, there are many translations. Different authors take the Chinese scripture and say it in different ways. I've taken a mixture of it, and I've just kind of put it over here as part of my notes. But the concept is pretty much bang on. Verse 16. Verse 16. So I read verse 49, now verse 16. Great beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. Once again, great beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. Hidden in all misfortune is good fortune. What's coming to an end now? People are ending their jobs, ending their relationships, ending their contracts, ending one phase of their life and starting another phase of their life. Hidden in all misfortune is good fortune. Verse 16 of the Tao Te Ching. Verse 29. Verse 29 of the Tao Te Ching. Any season will not last forever. Any season will not last forever. Things will change. This is nature's law. Lao Tzu said, nature's law is nothing can last forever. Winter must end and summer must start. Summer must end and winter must start. Whenever a situation, I like this, whenever a situation develops to its extreme, it is bound to turn around and become its opposite. Whenever a situation develops to its extreme, it must turn around and become its opposite. And this is the Arjun Iyer version of these two verses. There is a time to be glad, and there's a time to be sad. There's a time to be blissed, and there's a time to be pissed. There's a time to be determined, and there's a time to be depressed. There's a time to be strong, and there's a time to be sick. There is a time to have options, and there is a time to have obstacles. There is a time to tap into potentials, and there is a time to experience problems. There is a time when you are thriving, and there is a time when you are barely surviving. There is a time to enjoy your riches, and there is a time to endure your rags. There is a time to be in harmony, and there is a time to be in hell. Thank you very much.